It was a splendid day on the Island of Sodor. Thomas was taking Annie and Clarabel back to the yards. A new engine had arrived and he wanted to say hello. The engine was beautiful, with shiny paintwork and a gleaming brass dome.
Thomas, meet Emily.
Hello.
Hello to you.
Emily, collect your coaches, please. You and your driver must learn the line.
Yes, sir, she answered. Thomas was impressed. Later, the only coaches Emily's driver could find were Annie and Clarabel. "These aren't your sort of coaches," he said, "but I suppose they'll do." Annie and Clarabel felt insulted. "How dare he say we'll do?" Clarabel whispered. Emily puffed carefully along the track. "How dare he say we'll do? How dare he say we'll do?" grumbled the coaches. Thomas saw Emily coming down the line, pulling Annie and Clarabel. "Hello, Thomas," Emily called. But Thomas was cross. "Those are my coaches," he muttered. "Give them back." Emily didn't hear Thomas and she went on her way. Then Edward passed. And Percy. When Emily whistled hello, the engines didn't whistle back. Emily couldn't understand why they were so unfriendly. She was upset. Later, the Fat Controller spoke to Thomas.
I want you to go to the docks to pick up new coaches.
"New coaches? But, sir—"
Really useful engines don't argue,
said the Fat Controller. Thomas didn't want new coaches. He wanted Annie and Clarabel back. When Oliver saw Emily return to the yard, he was surprised. "Those are Thomas's coaches." "So that's why he looked cross," exclaimed Emily. "I'll go and apologise." "Don't want new coaches, don't want new coaches," chuffed Thomas. Later, Emily was still looking for Thomas when a signalman flagged her down. "Oliver hasn't cleared his signal box," he told Emily's driver. "Please go and see what's wrong." Emily could see that Oliver had broken down on the crossing. Then Emily heard Thomas's whistle. He could see Oliver, and he knew he could never stop in time. Oh! Emily charged towards Oliver, and with a huge effort, pushed him across the tracks. Just in time. Later, the Fat Controller praised Emily.
Well, John, you were a very brave engine.
"The bravest," chuffed Oliver.
It gives me great pleasure to present you with 2 new coaches.
"Thank you, sir," replied Emily. "I'm sorry I took Annie and Clarabel." "And I'm sorry I was so cross," replied Thomas. Friends? Friends. Emily loves her coaches and being part of the Fat Controller's railway. At harvest time, the air is filled with the smell of fresh fruit and vegetables. The engines happily deliver their loads to market. But one day, mist and rain swirled down Toby's line. Percy was delivering a load of fresh tomatoes. Suddenly, he felt a big bump.
Bust my buffers!
Percy cried.
What was that?
The guard put out the warning flags while Percy's driver inspected the tracks. "The earth's crumbling," he said.
We must tell the Fat Controller,
decided Percy. Percy puffed back as fast as he could.
I've got important news. The tracks on Toby's line are wobbly.
Huh, huffed Gordon.
Old and wobbly, just like Toby. That's not news. Can't stop to listen to your silly chatter.
Gordon never listens to me, muttered Percy.
Next, he spoke to the Fat Controller.
Sir!
Not now, Percy.
Thomas, you are to collect the prize bull. He's at the farm on Toby's line.
But those tracks are wobbly, cried Percy.
They are safe enough, said the Fat Controller.
Bye, Percy.
Nobody ever listens to me.
Thomas was carefully chuffing through the rain. Soon he had collected the farmer's bull and was on his way back. The rain had made the tracks more wobbly than ever. Suddenly, there was a deep rumbling sound. Thomas's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late.
Cinders and ashes!
Cried Thomas.
We're stuck!
And they were.
Late that night, Thomas still hadn't returned. Percy was worried.
Thomas is in trouble, he said.
Gordon and James took no notice. Worry wheels, huffed Gordon.
Fussy funnel,
said James.
Please, Percy asked his driver, can we find Thomas?
Right away, said his driver. Percy was nervous, but his lamp shone brightly in the dark. The tracks creaked and wobbled, but Percy pressed on.
Percy!
cried Thomas. Thomas was very happy to see his friend.
I'll have you out in no time,
said Percy. Percy puffed and pulled and pulled and puffed. And finally, Thomas and his driver were free. "Oh, thank you," said Thomas. "I'm glad to be useful," smiled Percy. It was dawn before the track was cleared. Then Percy and Thomas made their way back home.
Thomas is here,
Whistled Percy.
Percy saved the day,
said Thomas. Agreed the bull.
I'm sorry, Percy, said the Fat Controller. We must do a better job of listening to you in future.
Percy was pleased. Fergus, a small railway traction engine, works on the island of Sodor. One day he was on his way to the quarry. He had a special job to do for the Fat Controller. "Hello," whistled Thomas. "Where are you going?" "To the quarry," Fergus chuffed happily.
Watch out for the twins, said Thomas.
"They love to make mischief. I won't let young rascals rattle me."
You don't know the twins like I do, warned Thomas.
Fergus arrived at the quarry. He went to work with Mavis and the twins.
I'm afraid the trucks are in a mess, said Mavis.
Not to worry, we'll sort them out. Bill and Ben were delighted.
"Now we'll have some fun," whistled Ben.
"We'll have the old boiler in a spin," steamed Bill. Fergus liked helping Mavis, but he didn't like the way the twins were behaving one bit. Bill banged his trucks hard. Some rocks fell onto the track. "Do it right," Fergus ordered. Bill didn't like being ordered about by a traction engine.
Don't interfere,
He snapped back. Then Ben pushed his trucks to block the line. Fergus was stuck. "Out of my way," steamed Fergus, but Ben just grinned. The next day, the men were blasting rock.
Wait for the all clear signal, Fergus called to Bill and Ben. Do it right. There he goes again, puffed Bill. Do it right from morning till night. Keep your funnel out of our quarry,
huffed Ben. The quarrymaster sent Bill and Ben to collect a rock crusher from the harbour. Fergus was left in peace with Mavis. The twins were still thinking about Fergus.
He's just an old fusspot,
said Bill.
He's always saying, do it right. Well, the next thing he tells us to do, wheezed Bill, we'll do it wrong. They laughed. Ha!
Bill and Ben steamed back to the quarry. The rock crusher was heavy, shaking the rails as they went. The blasting has made that rock face unsafe, warned Fergus. Don't go near it. Do it right. But the twins took no notice of Fergus and were very naughty. As roughly as they could, they rattled the load towards the cliff. Look out! cried Fergus, and he rushed forward and bumped Bill and Ben out of the way. His driver jumped to safety as the rocks began to fall, but Fergus was covered in rocks right up to his funnel. It took a long time to dig him out, and no one worked harder to help than Bill and Ben. At last, Fergus was free. Bill and Ben were ashamed. We shouldn't have been so naughty, said Bill. We're very sorry, added Ben. Good, smiled Fergus. From now on, we can all do it right together. Rheneas and Skarloey work on the most beautiful line on the Island of Sodor. They love to puff through the forests and over the rivers. An old bridge crosses one of the rivers. Some of its beams were rotten and had now been damaged by a storm. Skarloey chuffed happily along. He didn't see the broken rail until it was too late. He dangled dangerously above the water. Help! But Rheneas soon pulled him to safety. A few days later, the Fat Controller came to the sheds. The old bridge has been mended. The workers' trucks have been left there. Skarloey, I need you to collect them. Yes, sir, chuffed Skarloey. But he didn't want to go on the bridge again. When Skarloey arrived, he saw the trucks on the other side. He started to cross, but stopped. He looked down into the rushing water. Skarloey was scared. He remembered what had happened before. "Come on, Skarloey," called his driver. "The bridge is safe now." But Skarloey wouldn't cross the bridge. And he and his driver went home instead. "We'll pick up the trucks," said Rheneas's driver. "But if you don't cross the bridge soon," said Rheneas, "the Fat Controller will be cross." Now Rheneas had to take Skarloey's loads as well as his own. Each morning he collected the trucks, puffing across the bridge with his heavy load. Finally, the Fat Controller came to see Skarloey.
If you won't cross the old bridge, you must stay here and shunt trucks. I can't have engines that won't do as they're told."
"Sorry, sir," said Skarloey sadly. The next morning, Rheneas took Skarloey's heavy trucks as usual. Then he puffed and heaved through the countryside towards the bridge. He puffed so hard that he ran out of water.
Bother!
The yard manager spread the news. "Rheneas has broken down." "We must go and help him," he said bravely. They set off immediately. Skarloey was scared but determined. He rolled slowly up to the edge. The bridge creaked loudly. The river seemed deeper than ever. "I must rescue my friend," whispered Skarloey. He chuffed slowly onto the bridge. The bridge groaned as he rolled forward, but Skarloey puffed on. Finally, his driver coupled up and pulled Rheneas to safety. "Thank you," said Rheneas. "You were very brave to help me." Skarloey is no longer afraid of the bridge and loves his journeys more than ever. Summer is a busy time on the island of Sodor. Holidaymakers have so much to see and do. There are trips to the seaside, balloon rides in the country, and a brass band playing. One morning, Edward was in a hurry. He didn't even stop to say hello to Stepney. Thomas was pleased to see Edward. "Your smile's as broad as your smokebox. I'm on my way to pick up the brass band," replied Edward. "The concert is tomorrow night." "Don't crack your smokebox," teased Thomas. Edward couldn't wait to hear the brass band play their wonderful music. He was so excited about meeting the brass band that he didn't notice the giant crane. It was unloading a huge ship's boiler. Suddenly, the crane swung the boiler and knocked Edward right off the track. Cranky had been watching.
You useless little engines are always in the way.
Poor Edward. The Fat Controller came immediately.
"We will take you to the fitter's yard, and Bertie will have to meet the brass band instead of you."
Edward was sad. That night, a raging storm rolled in. The fitters worked through the night trying to mend Edward. The rain pelted down. Now Edward felt sad and very damp. Morning came and the Fat Controller arrived. "Please, sir," pleaded Edward, "will the fitters be finished soon?"
Not soon enough, and the band can't wait. I'm sorry, Edward. Bertie will take them to the concert.
Edward felt worse than ever. Bertie collected the brass band and set off immediately. He bumped cheerfully along the country roads. But there was trouble ahead. Last night's storm had flooded the road. Bertie's driver decided to take a shortcut. But it was very muddy.
Bertie's wheels did not like the mud. They scooted, they skated, they slid, they slipped. "I'm stuck," he groaned. Bertie revved his engine, but his wheels spun round and round. He couldn't budge. The brass band were worried. "We mustn't be late for our concert." "Tune up your tuba," cried the leader of the band. "We'll call for help." By now, Edward was mended and hooked up to his coaches. "I can hear music," said his driver. "That's not music," wheezed Edward. "That's an alarm." And they raced off to the rescue. The musicians were delighted to see their old friend. So was Bertie. "I'll get you to the concert in time," Edward cried. "Thank you," said the worried bandsman. That night, the concert was a great success. Everyone loved the music. Especially Edward. It was the end of a busy day. The engines had been working hard. They were pleased and proud. Except Henry. He was feeling ill. "What's the matter with you, Henry?" Thomas asked. "My boiler's grumbling." "Maybe it's grumbling at you." "That's not funny," hissed Henry. "You just don't care." But Emily saw that Henry was leaving a puddle of water behind. She was worried. The next morning, the Fat Controller arrived. "Thomas, Henry, Percy, I want you to collect some trucks and take them to the docks."
"Yes, sir," cried Thomas and Percy. Henry watched the engines puff away. He didn't feel well. Useful engines don't complain. He was leaving water everywhere as he chuffed towards the coaling plant. When Emily saw this, she was more worried than ever. Then Thomas and Percy overtook Henry. "Hurry up, Henry!" Percy tooted. "I can't go any faster," Henry chuffed miserably. "You're just being lazy," teased Thomas. By the time Thomas and Percy reached the coaling plant, they had a naughty plan. "Please, sir, Henry wants to take more trucks." "He is bigger," added Percy. The yard manager agreed. Meanwhile, Emily was talking to the Fat Controller. "Oh, I'm worried about Henry."
"Perhaps his tubes are leaking," replied the Fat Controller. "You'd better check."
By the time Henry reached the coaling plant, Thomas and Percy had already left. "Why did Thomas and Percy leave me so many trucks?" moaned Henry. "They know I'm not feeling well." "We'll still have to take them," said his driver. Henry chuffed and puffed and pulled his long line of trucks. You can do it, Henry, encouraged his driver. But it was no use. Henry ground to a halt. Just then, Emily arrived. Are you all right, Henry? No, moaned Henry. I'm stuck. Henry's fireman uncoupled the heavy coal trucks. Emily changed tracks and then hooked up to Henry. Oh, thank you, Emily, wished Henry. Emily and Henry puffed into the docks. Well done, Emily, said the Fat Controller. Then he spoke to Henry. You were brave, Henry. You weren't well, but you still tried to pull the heavy trucks. Thomas and Percy felt ashamed. We're sorry, Henry, said Thomas. We didn't think you were really sick, added Percy. Go back and collect Henry's truck straight away, said the Fat Controller sternly. Yes, sir, whispered Thomas. Soon Henry was mended and back at work. You're looking so much better, said Emily. Well, they've mended me tubes, but they didn't even look at me brakes, me gauges, me squeaky wheels. All in good time, Henry. Poor Henry. The engines on the island of Sodor want to be responsible, reliable, and really useful. They are happiest when the Fat Controller gives them important work to do. James thinks his work is very important indeed. He is proud of his red paint and likes to look clean and smart. One day, Percy puffed to the washdown. My whistle's clogged. He tried to blow hard to clean it out, but instead blew mud all over Gordon. Silly, huffed Gordon. Percy was trying not to laugh. Keep your dirt away from me. I'm collecting the mare today. I should do that. Really? Chuckled James. You'd need a washdown first. Pah, snorted Gordon. James just laughed. Soon James had collected the mare and puffed proudly away. Just look at me, Gordon. Show off, grunted Gordon. The Fat Controller came to the sheds. I need an engine to collect the Queen of Sodor. Who's the Queen of Sodor? A leaky old barge, replied the Fat Controller. She needs to go to the workshops. It's dirty work, I'm afraid. Just then, James shunted into the sheds. This gave Gordon an idea. Is collecting the Queen of Sodor important work too? Very important work. Do I have a volunteer? Very important work, exclaimed James. I'll do it. Then it's settled. She's waiting at the canal. Thank you, sir, said James. Gordon was delighted. His plan was working. I'm here to collect the Queen of Sodor, announced James. There she is, said the yard manager. James was furious. That old tub! Gordon tricked me. He wants me to get dirty. I'll show him. A shiny engine like me never gets dirty. Soon, James set off with the Queen of Sodor. It was a long journey to the workshops. Shiny and clean, puffed James. Then there was trouble. The tall funnel of the old barge crashed through a pipe. James was sure he'd get covered in sludge, but he didn't. Shiny and clean, he declared again. The workmen soon cleared the mess, and then James was on his way. He arrived safe and sound, pleased that the dirty work was done. When James returned to the sheds, he was very proud of himself. How did you manage to stay so clean?
I have to stay clean,
Boasted James.
in case there's important work to do.
Just then, Percy returned from the quarry.
My whistle is clogged again. Watch out, James. Dust went everywhere. I did warn you.
You'll need a wash down now, teased Thomas.
Good.
Snorted James.
It will make me readier than ever. I'm such a splendid engine.
It was a hot summer's day on the island of Sodor. The engines were busy taking trucks full of slate from the quarry. The heat and dust made their axles ache. We've shunted every truck in the quarry today, wheezed Scarloey. But I'm too thirsty to feel useful, complained Peter Sam. The summer sunshine made people thirsty too. The refreshment lady was keeping very busy at the tea rooms. The next day, the fat controller had news for Peter Sam. The refreshment lady needs a place for another tea room. I can find her a beautiful place. I knew it. It'll be a piece of cake. Tea rooms don't live in cakes. It's just my way of saying it would be fun and easy to find the right place. Peter Sam puffed along the woodland way. And the old castle causeway. And the whispering waterfall. Thank you, Peter Sam, said the refreshment lady, but I don't know what to do. I can't make up my mind. What a shame I can't build a tea room in each place. Peter Sam was very disappointed. He didn't feel useful. That night, there was a storm. Lightning flashed and thunder crashed. The rain poured down. All the engines were talking excitedly about the storm, except Peter Sam. He was thinking about the refreshment lady's tea room. The next morning, the fat controller came to the sheds. Peter Sam, I want you to go and help Rusty clear the storm damage. Yes, sir, Peter Sam said, and he hurried away. At last, he thought, he could be really useful. Peter Sam soon found Rusty. The storm had swept the shed onto the line. Driver says this shed is useless now. It's not a shed, exclaimed Peter Sam. It's an old railway coach. And that gave him an idea. Back at the yards, his driver spoke to the fat controller. Peter Sam thinks this old coach could be a tea room. I'll have Jem take a look. I'm sure he can repair it, agreed the fat controller. The fat controller was right. In no time at all, the old coach had turned into a tea room on wheels. The refreshment lady could hardly believe her eyes.
Oh, it's beautiful. I told you it'd be a piece of cake.
The fat controller paused.
And with many cakes in it, I'm sure.
Then he spoke to Peter Sam.
And you shall pull the tea shop special.
I'd be proud to, replied Peter Sam. Now the refreshment lady serves tea at all her favourite places. At Woodland Way, the Old Castle Causeway, and Whispering Waterfall. Peter Sam is a happy engine. I told you it would be a piece of cake. A brand new tank engine was racing across the island of Sodor. He was very excited, and he didn't want to be late.
Right on time,
said the fat controller. Thomas and Percy looked at the big tank engine. He was very smart.
This is Arthur, said the fat controller. He's here to shunt trucks and pull freight.
Nice to meet you, puffed Arthur politely.
And he's got a spotless record,
the fat controller added. What's a spotless record? Whispered Percy. It means he's never been naughty or made a mess, replied Thomas. The three engines were soon at work. Thomas and Percy were bumping trucks. They knew this was naughty, but they were having fun. Join in, Arthur, said Thomas. No, thank you, wished the new engine. He'd never been naughty before. Arthur's first job was to push a trainload of fruit to market. The truck started to sing. A root-toot-toe, we want to go. The fruit's going off 'cause you're too slow. How rude, huffed Arthur. This gave Thomas a naughty idea. The fat controller doesn't like the trucks singing, said Thomas. You must stop them. Thank you, said Arthur. I will. Arthur was glad he could keep the trucks in order. He'll never stop the trucks from singing, laughed Thomas. Arthur chuffed cheerfully through the countryside. Soon, the trucks started singing again.
Chug, chug, chuff, you tug and huff, but you're so rusty you can't even puff.
Stop singing, huffed Arthur.
Trucks should do as they're told.
The troublesome trucks were cross. If they couldn't sing, they would teach Arthur a lesson instead. We'll show him, they giggled. He can't push us around. Arthur struggled over bridges. And he huffed and puffed through tunnels. He came over the top of a big hill. You can't catch us, laughed the trucks. Wheesh! But there was trouble ahead. Duck had stopped at the crossing at the bottom of the hill. Arthur's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Squashed fruit flew everywhere. Arthur was upset. His spotless record was ruined. Beep, beep! What a mess, puffed Thomas. The fat controller was very annoyed.
What happened here?
The trucks were singing. I told them to stop, but they made me go too fast. Please, sir, it's my fault, Thomas told the fat controller what he had done.
Arthur, it's fruitless for me to say more, but Thomas, you must help clear up this mess.
Harvey arrived with the breakdown crane. He could see there was a lot of work to be done. Everyone worked hard, and Thomas took the loaded trucks away. That evening, Arthur was having the squashed fruit cleaned out of his funnel. "I'm sorry I played a trick on you," said Thomas. "Thanks for owning up to it," replied Arthur. "Maybe spotless records are made to be broken," smiled Thomas. "And then mended again," finished Arthur, "just like friendships."